Okay, yeah. So I'm actually very excited today to talk to you about actually what I do. So I'm a quality assurance specialist, consultant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you throughout the journey, throughout hoping that you understand what is quality assurance about. I'm going to start a little bit about what's my background and how did I become a quality assurance today. I'm going to discuss what does it mean to be a part of quality assurance. And I'm going to go a little bit further and talk about some of the myth that surrounds QA. And I'm going to try to bust this myth around QA. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about one aspect of QA. It's a type of testing that I'm very passionate about, and I'm an advocate for it. But I'm going to leave it to the end of the presentation. I'm going to tell you now. So one of the code that I really like is quality is not an act, it's a habit. So there's good habits and there's bad habits. A bunch of good habits become behavior, and a bunch of behavior becomes a culture. And that's what quality is. And that applies to everything, at work, as quality assurance, and in life. So who am I and why? So I graduated as an electrical engineer. I worked, and my dream coming out of university is to work as a hardware designer. I was lucky enough to land a job as a hardware designer, and this is such a big deal for a junior engineer to land this job. 2 years in the job, I found that I'm missing something. I really don't like what I'm doing. And the difference was, in university, as a hardware designer, you see the product from beginning to end. You get to think about it, design it, and test it. When you work in a bigger company, you work on a very small piece of the entire project. So I started talking to people in my company. So the company I worked in, it was Nokia. Back then it was Alcatel-Lucent. Talking to different managers, I really want to be more on a system level. And I was able to land a job as a system level tester. Worked there for 2 years, a year and a half. By a year and a half into there, I still feel like something is missing. I'm only testing. I don't see the requirements. I don't see what the customer wants. I don't understand the big picture. So I had a friend who was telling me there's an opportunity at ThinkCraft for quality assurance specialist. And this is when I actually took that job and became a QA. I worked at that company for a year and a half, and there's not one day that I dreaded going to work. I would wake up every morning feeling very passionate about going to work. And this is where I knew that this is exactly what I want to be. So in June, I quit being a full-time and decided to become a consultant. So now I'm a quality assurance consultant. And my first contract is with MXI, and MXI, they do aviation maintenance software. And this is where I stand today. So I've been talking a lot about QA, quality assurance. So what is quality assurance? So this is a definition of the internet, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to end my presentation there. That's it. Quality assurance is a process-driven approach that facilitates and defines goals regarding product design, development, and production. That's it. You guys got it? Yeah, we're good? Okay. The most important thing about quality assurance, that process, there's two main things in that process. To verify and to validate, and to help you understand what that means. So let's say you got a requirement. You got a customer asking that he wants you to deliver a fully functional Tesla S model car, right? So you deliver a car to the testing team. They test it. They make sure there's nothing wrong with it. There's no major issues, and there's no critical issues. See, so they did their validation part of things. But what we deliver to the customer is a BMW. And we failed to verify that what we're delivering matches the requirements of the customer. So this is quality assurance in a very high level. And I thought that to understand it more, I will talk about some of the myths that goes around quality assurance. So people say testing is quality assurance. So when I tell someone I'm a quality assurance, they're like, oh, so you're a tester. No, I'm not a tester. I'm a quality assurance specialist. Testing is easy. Oh, can you get me a job as a QA? It's easy. I can click things and it works. That's it. No. Quality assurance is expensive. All issues can be eliminated from the system. Quality assurance can be left to the final stage. So I'm going to talk about the first three because this will give us a better understanding of QA. So myth number one, quality assurance is testing. That is not true. Testing is only one step in that quality assurance. Testing is different testing levels, but good quality assurance follows the entire development process, that product from the requirements point all the way till you deliver it. So when you look at the flow, you have the test planning, the test design, the test execution, and then the summary reporting. Testing comes here. Test planning and test design are an art by themselves. So that brings us back that the quality assurance is a process, and it is a habit. It's just not an act of clicking, and we're good. Myth number 2, testing is easy. And this I hear at least, let's say maybe once or twice a month from someone that testing is easy. So if I give you a rope to test it, anybody can actually pull it and check, and it doesn't break. This is easy, right? But now, let me ask you if you would use that rope for someone who's going to actually do bungee jumping. Do you really think it's easy? You really need to think about all different aspects of how to test that rope, because if something goes wrong, you may kill somebody. So really good QA professionals are like a gold dust. And the reason for this is, as a good QA, you need to speak the language of business. You need to speak the technical terms, so you need to be able to talk to developers. And then you need to gather all the information from the business side of things, the technical side of things, and try to design test cases that find issues early in your development process, decrease the risk of software failure, also gets the applause of the client, the user, end user, and the company you work for. So you're a people pleaser, you're a business person, and you're a technical person, and you have to know enough about every aspect of it. Another thing why testing is not easy, taking responsibility is never easy. And when something fails on the field, they don't blame the project manager, and they don't blame the developer. They blame the quality assurance that they did not do their job. I'll give you an example. In 2000, there was a radiation therapy software, and it killed 3 people. Because the QA team, when they tested that the order of the input that they're putting in a certain order. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Technician, when they use the software, they added that input in different orders. And that ended up giving some people double dose and actually killed 3 people. So that makes testing not easy. Number three, quality assurance is expensive. Quality assurance is never an extra topping. It's never the extra cheese in your cheeseburger. It is the cheese in the cheeseburger. Software failure can cost billions of dollars, and sometimes it actually can cost people lives. And people's lives can't put a cost on that. And there's a lot of software failures out there that have actually cost people lives. In the long run, if quality assurance was implemented correctly, it can never be expensive. It can get only expensive if the QA role was not defined properly at the beginning. And it should jeopardize that communication between the quality assurance and the project manager, business analysts, developers, and clients. When quality assurance gets involved at the end of the project, so there's a lot of projects that have worked with some of that they put the quality assurance right at the end, and that becomes a disaster. Let me tell you, you're gonna lose a lot of money, you're gonna be behind budget and behind schedule, and it becomes a disaster. And you will never be able to please the client. Sometimes as well, there's a lot of QAs when they do develop test plans, it's very poorly designed. They don't really think ahead of time. So this 3 myths about quality assurance gives you that better idea that quality assurance is a process. And to be a good QA, you need to have different skill set to be able to actually fulfill that role. So now I'm going to go into some of the roles in quality assurance. Oh, actually, before I go that, so over here there's a graph. Sorry. Oops. So it's tiny, but this is the requirement gathering, and then you go design development, unit testing, and then this is live. And you see that if you find bugs right here, it's very cheap to actually fix. But if you go live, it becomes very expensive to fix bugs. So a good quality assurance will be always able to find issues right at the requirement gathering. So off the document, I should be able to find issues. So roles in quality assurance. There's your QA manager, your analyst, and your tester. And I'm going to go into what every one of them actually do. And this would follow the same process that we have the planning, we have the design, the execution, the summary reporting. QA manager. So a QA manager has to be able to plan, control, and report. And what that means is that a good QA manager should be able to define and determine the scope of the testing. What's the risk? What's the objective of what I'm trying to achieve? What's my estimate? What's my budget? What kind of testing am I be testing? I'm going to be testing performance testing and stress testing. Is there other types of testing that I'm going to be doing? Also evaluating the exit criteria. So take an example. Requirements are never like that. But let's say I have a requirement to build a functional elevator. A QA manager should actually look at this and start thinking, what is my scope of testing? Am I building all kinds of different elevators, or is it only, for example, hydraulic elevator? So they get to define this. What is my risk? It could be that I know for a fact that I have a third-party vendor who's always late in delivering something. So I need to put that as a risk and factor that in my schedule and my estimates and my budget. So this is the role of the QA manager. Oh, and one important thing of the QA manager before I forget, the QA manager makes sure that what we're delivering matches what we said we're going to deliver. And this is very important, the QA manager. So the QA manager has to look at the entire team and get information from all their team members. An analyst. QA analyst, that role is an art by itself. You have to have a very vivid imagination to be an analyst. Because as an analyst, you need to look at a document. There's no product in front of you, there's nothing. A document of requirements and find issues in it. And then from that document, you need to start designing test cases that gives you the best return of an investment. So if I go, let's say, back to the functional elevator. Someone who doesn't have a background in QA may tell you, oh, I'm gonna create a test case to test each level in the elevator. So going from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, so I have 10 floors, this is 10 test cases. And I'm gonna design a test case to test each weight limit. This is another 4. So I already had 14 test cases. And I did not even test the functionality of the elevator. This is not good test case design. Or I could say, oh, I'm going to actually test different user scenarios, how they're going to use the elevator with different input level every time. So a different floor and a different weight. And this way I can reduce the 15 to 5 and I get a fuller coverage. So you guys know the 80-20 rules, right? I don't have to really have 100% testing. I can have 80%, and that 80% will give me my most of return on investment. The tester. So the tester, and this is the job of the tester, they take the information that they got from the QA manager and the QA analyst, and they start implementing the test case. So they put the steps in, they start prioritizing them according to what the QA manager is like. Oh, these test cases are very critical because these will affect people's lives. So let's say I'm going to do stress testing on the elevator, make sure that if I exceed the weight limit, it doesn't just fall, it would break and stops. And then they start grouping the test cases together into suites, and then they execute it. When they find issues, they would raise bugs. Raising bugs is another art by itself. You'll find sometimes a lot of bugs. It's one line. And this does not help the developer whatsoever. A good tester should be able to reproduce the issue, try to narrow it down, and write exactly what happened, what's the expected behavior, and what is the actual behavior. So this way, when the issue goes to the developer to fix, they're not sitting there trying to figure out, like, what is he talking about? And they may look at it a month after, and the tester himself does not remember what happened. And that just wastes a lot of money. So these are the 3 roles. So which one am I from the 3? So I have done all 3. I did QA manager, an analyst, and a tester. The one that I enjoyed the most is being a QA analyst. It's fun, it's very challenging. I get to talk to everyone in the company, get to talk to the client. So it's a very interesting role. But I also like the other 2, but this is my most favorite role. So, actually, before I go to this, So that brings me almost toward the end of what is quality assurance. So if anything you want to get out of quality assurance is it an actual process, you need to verify and validate. These are the two things. You need to make sure there's no issues in the product that you're delivering, and that does not only apply to software. It could be any kind of product. And you need to verify that it actually matches the requirement of your client. So this is quality assurance. It's not easy, and testing is not quality assurance. So this is from a very high level. Next thing I'm going to be talking about is a type of testing that I'm extremely passionate about. Who here has heard about web accessibility? Web accessibility.
Well,
Web accessibility. Okay. So I'm a huge advocate for this. I'm going to share a personal story. So I have an uncle who's actually blind. He navigates the world around him by the screen reader on his phone. When the websites are created with accessibility guideline in mind, the screen reader can actually read that information and present it back to my uncle. So he's still connected to the world around him. So this is what web accessibility is. Web accessibility is making sure, and it does not only apply to websites, it also applies to softwares, that you design your software and your website to make sure that people with different types of disability can still access the information. And I'm a huge advocate for it because I really do believe that every person, regardless of what kind of disability they have, should be able to access that information. Another thing that I hear, do you know how do blind people watch movies? But they just hear, but blind people, how they actually understand what's happening around them.
or descriptive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is something called audio description that they would actually read on top of the movie. So the blind person, because they have their imagination is very strong, they still can actually watch, they understand what's happening. When there is pauses in the movie, there's someone reading on top of the movie. So if you go to YouTube, write the movie, audio descriptive, and you'll see. So you find people telling you, but a blind person can't watch a movie. No, they can. The technology is there. It's not the technology that's the problem, it's the people that's the problem. Some of the myths about web accessibility. Oh, accessible websites are going to be ugly and boring. This is not true. This used to be true 15 years ago. Technology has actually evolved over the years that you can have all the whistles and blows in your website and you can still be accessible and could be read by a screen reader. If you want to see a website that has all the whistles and blow, Videotron, their business site, is accessible. And you'll see it has all different things. When you scroll, there's things popping right and left and everything. Web accessibility is expensive, time-consuming, and hard to implement. That part of hard to implement is not true, because web accessibility still uses the same technology that we use when we create websites. Still uses HTML, still uses CSS. You just have to put that extra time of thinking to design, to take that into consideration. Accessible sites only benefit a small percentage of people. 10% of the population worldwide have a certain kind of disability. So I don't think that is a small percentage of people. And this is not counting in that any one of us can have a short-term disability. I can break my wrist today, and I can't use the mouse. So I need to be able to use the keyboard to still access the information. I need to be able to still use my softwares and do everything that I want. So there's people with long-term disability, and we could have a short-term disability as well. Web accessibility is optional. In Canada, it's going to become the law in 2020. All of our websites that's done by the Canadian government are accessible. And then it's just going to, in 2020, they're going to actually force it on private companies. In the US, it's a bit different. So in US, they love suing each other. And so if you're a lawyer and you want to make money, what they do is literally they take someone with a disability, set them in front of a website. Can you use this? He's like, nope, I can't. They sued the company. So Netflix was sued, they paid $800,000. Toyotas was sued, Target was sued. I think Target was about $1 million something. So if you're in US and your website is not accessible, you're liable that she can sue you. And the lawyer makes money. And this is how they love doing things in the US. So there's the app that they have for accessibility, but it's in a very general context. It's not really targeted toward digital information, but they still can use that law to sue companies. And by the way, Cineplex was sued as well. So Cineplex was sued because their website was not accessible, and they made it accessible. So the web is a part of the solution, it's never the source of the problem. And then, if anything from accessibility, this is the guideline. It's called Web Content Accessibility Guideline, or WCAG. That is the guidelines that you can use for your website, for your software. And then the different types of disability that this guideline helps is blindness, low vision, color blindness, deuterium, motor, speech disabilities, and seizure disorder. Does anyone know how could a website or a movie cause someone a seizure? Yes, yeah, exactly. So 3 flashes in less than a second, you can actually, someone with epilepsy, you can send them to the hospital. So that happened in Pokemon, so that their cartoon, they flashed yellow. That sent 100 kids to the hospital. Twilight as well. And you still see some e-commerce. This is not still very common in a lot of websites, but you still see some e-commerce sites. They have their banner, and you open it and just flash it. So you actually can cause someone a seizure, and they could be by themselves at home because you did not even think about it, and you thought, I'm by myself in this world. Who knows who's this gentleman?
Okay. Stephen Hawking.
Yes,
Stephen.
that is Stephen Hawking. And that wasn't his wedding day. Can't believe that is Stephen Hawking. In one of his TED Talks, what does he say? He's like, all my life I have sought to understand the universe and find answers. And he keeps talking about what he found out in that TED Talk. And then he keeps saying, I've been very lucky that my disability have not been a serious handicap. Indeed, it has probably given me more time than most people to pursue the quest for knowledge. So let's think for a second, if we did not help to develop the technology to help Steve Hawkins to be able to actually talk about what he thinks about. He might most probably end up in a nursing hospital by himself, and we never know what goes in his brain. So this is something I truly believe in. I say that all the time. But the beauty of a design is in its perfection, and the beauty of the people is in their imperfection. We're beautiful because we're imperfect. We don't want all of us looking the same. And because we're never perfect, we need to always consider for each other. We need always to think about each other. A design or a product, we're expecting it to be perfect. If I have a tablet, Samsung, and you have a tablet, Samsung, I'm expecting it to work exactly the same with no major issues. And even though it's never 100% free of bugs, but it looks perfect. On the other hand, people are not. And this is the beauty of them. That brings me kind of to the end of my presentation. But one thing also that I would like you to take out of this, that I would really hope that you become an advocate with me as well, is that when you hear someone talking about they're going to build a website or create a software, ask them, did you think about accessibility? Did you think about integrating this in your website and software? And try to fight for it, because they're going to tell you all different things. It's going to make my website ugly, it's not useful, it does not help many people, and this is not true. That brings me to the end for questions. If you don't have questions, and you slept throughout my presentation, you can look at this calculator and try to find the issues in it. There's a lot of bugs in this calculator. So you can go ahead and do this, or I'm open for questions.
Yeah, I have a question. I can see how important the job of a quality assurance person is, but in our economy today, companies, businesses are always looking for economies. In other words, they've got something that works and tested, but then how can we do it a little cheaper? How can we save money here? How do you monitor going forward that type of, you've identified yourself with a particular product, and then it transforms as with time, and how do you determine that it's still living up to its, it's doing what it's supposed to do?
Okay, so one of the main things why QA can get very expensive is you're hiring a team of QA that doesn't know what they're doing and they burn through your budget very quickly. Or you're putting that team of QA right at the end of the project. So even though the company may think they're saving money, they're not, because putting your testing team at the end, you have depleted your budget. They did not think for the risk and the estimation that they can actually look at that project and say, okay, I need a QA at the beginning of that project to help me identify bugs. And I have worked in projects that both, that where I'm involved at the beginning. I am the safe net, I'm the gatekeeper, and I've worked at the project where the project manager absolutely said, I want to save money, and I'm going to put the QA at the end. The one who said, I want to save money and put me at the end, we lost so much money. We're actually paying outside of the company's pocket. The one that actually involved me right from the beginning, we're always, for a year and a half, agreed on budget, on schedule. And then again, it depends on the type of QA that you're hiring for the job. Quality assurance